when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, is very likely how lots of us are feeling today. Today we lost a huge legend inside the wrestling world, polarizing name in and outside the wrestling world, Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan died today at 71 years old, went in cardiac arrest this morning about 10 a.m. in his home, and paramedics, EMT, and doctors were not able to resuscitate, revive, and bring the Hulkster back out and kick out one more time like he had been his whole wrestling career. So amazing to see the support from Vince McMahon, Triple H, Ric Flair, to name a few. Yeah, just nearly speechless, but I want to make a quick video and try to highlight how impactful Hulk Hogan was on me as a wrestling fan who grew up in the 80s. My first memory of wrestling, of Hulk Hogan, was waking up in the morning and my bed sheets on my bunk beds my brother and I shared. My brother on the top bunk had He-Man bed sheets and pillowcases, and I had WrestleMania bed sheets. And I would have the Hulkster and Andre and Ultimate Warrior and Legion of Doom and Big Boss Man and Mr. Perfect, Dusty Rhodes. And to the left of my bed would be a big cardboard cutout, and I would color. I remember coloring this big poster and sign, and I'd bring the sign to the Allstate Arena. My mom and dad were so gracious, getting my brother and I tickets to this wrestling contest. And my brother and I would chant, USA, USA. And Hulk Hogan was the biggest face, the good guy. And he'd be fighting bad guys like Sergeant Slaughter and maybe The Undertaker at the time, or Yokozuna and Andre. And my brother and I, we just thought it was so real. The promos with the microphone, how smooth they were, talking back and forth, smacking each other, hitting each other. And for a couple of hours a day, my brother and I got to go and see this wrestling take place. And it was a cinema, it was an opera, and I just fell in love. I fell in love. Tomorrow I'm going to wear these Hulk Hogan socks that will remind me of the hours and hours and years of memories we have with the Hulkster. But I have early memories going to see Hogan, like I said, wrestle in Chicago at the Allstate and United Center and some small places here in Illinois. So I probably saw him a handful of times growing up. Hogan, when I was 6, Hogan fought Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. And I'll never forget, he did the job for Warrior. Doing the job is laying down and getting the pin and taking the 1, 2, 3 on your back and looking up at the lights. And Hogan almost passed the torch to Ultimate Warrior back in 90, 91, 92. And not to say he was going anywhere, but Ultimate Warrior was a rising star back then. Shortly after, Hulkster went from WWF to WCW and was heavily involved in the Monday Night War, which is Vince McMahon against Ted Turner and TBS. And we'll never forget where we were, Rob and I, watching, and Hulk was the good guy. He was the good guy starting out in Japan in the early 80s, and then WWF here in the States. And WCW, he came out as the third man to help out then Macho Man and Lex Luger. And what happened was he did the first heel turn, going from yellow and red tights to black and white NWO, part of the bad guys. He had spray paint. He had black spray paint and would spray paint the NWO on his opponent's chest. Who you see here are Hulk, Scott Hall. Now two legends who have passed away. Only 2 left. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and X-Pac, 1, 2, 3 Kid, but these three here were the pioneers and staples and Mount Rushmores of the wrestling world, and Rob and I had such a fun time back. Rob was a WCW guy, and I was a WWF guy, and I'll never forget. I was 17 years old, and Hulk came out to Chicago suburb of Bolingbrook. He came to Bolingbrook, Illinois, to a Meyer gas station and grocery store for a book signing back in 2001. And my cousin Kenny and I were such fans. We, at that time, had our licenses, and we made our way up to Meyer to see Hulkster. And I remember I was sick as a dog. I don't know, I got almost like food poisoning, where I was so close to cancel on my cousin Kenny, and by the strength of God, and I made it there to Meyer, and the line was so long to see Hulkster, and here he is on the Nintendo cartridge. But I was so sick and didn't quite feel well. I was low on my electrolytes and had what I thought was food poisoning and had the 24-hour flu. I remember the line was so long from the back of the electronics store. Oh, there's a picture here. The back of the electronics store, and it would zigzag all the way through, and every 5 minutes we would move forward closer and closer to see the Hulkster. And I was tired as a dog and sick as a dog, and we made it to see the Hulkster. That's me, and on my left is Kevin Kelly and Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, and Hulkster. And he had such an aggressive, strong handshake, and I will never forget this moment. I will cherish it with my cousin Kenny. And this is one of his 2 books. Mind you, around this time, Hulkster was heavily involved in the reality show Hogan Knows Best, where he chose to have the cameras come into his house and film his real life 24/7, and the real struggles that came along with being a wrestler. At that time, him and Linda had their troubles. Nick, his son, 20 years old, got into a near deadly car accident in his Supra, totaling his Supra and paralyzing his friend John Graziano at the age of 17 years old, 16, 17, 18 in Tampa. And that story is talked about here. Hogan was plagued with lots and lots of difficulties and challenges in and outside the ring. He was not everyone's favorite superstar, but he always prioritized fighting for a fair contract and paying the right people that contribute to the ratings and the matches and the popularity. He instilled something in his contract in '97 for the first time ever, which is creative control. It put WCW in a difficult spot, but the Hulkster asked for creative control, where it made it really difficult. Here he is here on two video game covers with Andre and The Rock and John Cena. Hogan made it very difficult for the writers to book him in a loss, a clean loss, or a schmaz, where someone comes in from the side and does some kind of a distraction and gets a disqualification. Hogan had creative control, where he wanted to always have his best interest in mind of his character and the promotion and other wrestlers. But again, seeing Hogan at the All-State, seeing him at a number of times wrestle, and then seeing him playing as him as a character here on the Sega games. These are the old ones. He's just such a staple inside wrestling. If you don't follow wrestling, you at least recognize the name of Hulk Hogan. He was heavily prominent in the WCW and WWF Monday Night Wars, and there wasn't a real bone in his body after the number of surgeries that he had. He had hip replacement, knee replacement, back, neck, and spine. And the last 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks, wrestling fans grew very concerned that Hulkster went in for a routine as neck surgery can be, to fuse some vertebrae between C7 and C8 vertebrae. What they called a routine procedure. Would have been 6 months to 8 months of recovery, but they weren't expecting the complications that potentially Hogan may have came across end of May or early June. For the last 2 months, Hogan, rightfully so, has gone dark on the social media, and us wrestling fans haven't heard much from Hogan, and it grew grave concern because Hogan loved getting out there with the fans at his Tampa Bay wrestling Hogan Hangout, Hogan's Beach Shop. He would have pose with wrestlers with his championship belt, and he had a hard time getting away from the industry. Here's WrestleMania, 30 years of wrestling, and you see Hogan, Andre, and John Cena, and Triple H, and Undertaker, and The Rock, and on the top. Mind you, there are times in the WWE that Hogan is missing on some of the covers, and you might ask yourself why. Back in 2018, 2019, Hogan was involved in some controversy involving Bubba the Love Sponge and Gawker, and also was filmed using some racial comments that he has since apologized about numerously. So he parted ways from the WWE and separated from the WWE back in 2000. And the WWE attempted to erase his name from the record books, and they would gray him out and skip over him during some recognition ceremonies. And very thankfully so, in 2022, 23, and 24, Hogan was brought back in the video games. Like I said down here, 2022, to see Hogan on there was great. To see them possibly bury the hatchet and put NWO back front and center. But there was a time where the WWE had to kind of put some distance between them and the Hulkster. And that was hard for us, hardcore, long-time Hogan fans. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there are still some fans today, some wrestling fans, that are ready to leave Hogan's legacy in the back and where it is back in the 90s. And like any controversial, polarizing character, they have their good times and they have their difficult times as well. So Hogan returned back to Raw's debut on Netflix January 1st, 2025, and he came out to a plethora of mixed reactions. This was 2 months in the rear of Hulkster supporting the Republican convention. If you could imagine Hulk ripping his shirt off, supporting then President nominee, current President Donald Trump, and not to mention some of the controversial that Hogan and his son Nick have been in over the years, talking about the Graziano family and how they could possibly benefit from the accident and things like that, again, during the filming of the Hogan Knows Best on the VH1 hit reality show. And then Hogan's comments either about Brooke, who she was dating, or some recorded comments that Hogan thought were in private, but nonetheless, he's since apologized about using racial comments, slurs, and attempted to apologize, put that behind him. Again, in 2023, he was welcomed back, and then recently in January 2025, he was brought back for our Netflix debut of WWE Raw on Netflix, but met with mixed reaction. As you could imagine, some of us WWF fans are going to be cheering for Hogan long after he's now since passed away. And we can't help but think about wrestling and where it would be today if it weren't for this man here, Hollywood, Hulk Hogan. Here's Hollywood here, the black and white, and then the yellow. So such a controversial turn where he made it fun to cheer for the bad guy. Just such a wild time. It was over the years supporting, seeing Hulkster here with now everyone on this booklet has passed away. Hogan today, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, Andre, and the Big Boss Man. This is a Nintendo game that we would have to blow in like that to get it going back in 1985. And wow, who's to imagine that 40 years ago, these 5 superstars would since be in the afterlife. Let's see the back. Yeah, Ultimate Warrior, and looks like Tatanka as well. Again, such a sad day, but let's use it to celebrate some fun videos back here, if I may. Move these out of the way for a split second. Oopsie daisy. But as you recall, back in the 90s, Hulkamania here with my flag. I've got my American flag here, and I've got this I'll be waving this next couple days with my Hogan socks on. But as you can see here, these wrestling tapes back in the 90s came with posters, and this is VHS, kids. This is video VCR days, where they'd have the blue steel cage match, and this is a VHS, probably difficult to pull out, but this went in the VCR player, and we watched hours and hours of Hogan. Wow, just to imagine here, Super Tape, and the Bushwhackers are both since passed away. $1 Million Man and Jake the Snake Roberts are since alive, so that's great news. Mr. Perfect, Ric Flair, and Ravishing Rick Rude. But again, some real bangers. Hulkamania forever. Real bangers. Whether you liked Hogan, you loved him, you hated him, you booed him in the ring, he was a controversial wrestler that put wrestling on the map, and it wouldn't be but anywhere than where it is today if it weren't for Hogan. So Nick and Brooke and Linda and Sky, his current wife, and his kids, Nick and Brooke has since had 2 kids. I could only imagine what it was like being the son of Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan. But know that, many wrestling fans do the Hogan move. Many of us did your dad's leg drop on our siblings. My brother and I would, in our bedroom, we would take turns giving the Hulk Hogan leg drop. So Jay would lay down, and I'd run across the room, and I would do a leg drop and put all of my weight of my thigh on my brother's neck and chest and vocal cords, and then go for the pin. 1, 2, 3, and then I'd raise my championship belts, and I would imitate Hulk Hogan, and Jay would be Hogan or Warrior or Bret Hart and the Sharpshooter. So just know that every single wrestling fan around the world are thinking about your dad today, and we're so grateful and thankful. And all of us wrestlers, wrestling wouldn't be where it is today if it weren't for the Hulkster, and whether he be yellow and red like our days back in the 90s, or black and white like the NWO and the bad guys. He made it fun to cheer for the bad guys. So, Hulkster, rest easy. Tomorrow I will wear your Hollywood Hulk Hogan wrestling socks that I just cherish now more than I did before. Hulkster and Macho Man and Andre and Warrior, and just such amazing guys up there that you'll be greeted with right now. Yokozuna and Owen and Earthquake, to name a few. Hulkster, thanks for everything that you did for us wrestling fans. If it weren't for you, who knows where wrestling would be today. Thank you for the memories from one wrestling fan out there. Thanks, Hulkster. Rest easy.